All right, well, please join me in one of the most epic, underrated cars that I have driven as of recently. Welcome back to Exhaustsports Auto. My name is Kevin. I see you're interested in the Toyota Supra, are we? Okay, well, you should be because I'm interested in it. Why am I interested in it? Because I just can't stop driving this vehicle. It has been one of my most favorite sports cars I have driven in all of time, basically. And I will be making a LC500 comparison video here shortly. Yes, with this 2-liter 4-cylinder, because I actually determined that this is more than enough speed for the street. Slight delay, but that's okay. And there it is, that's the speed limit. So let's just calm down there. Because it's turbocharged, it gets up to speed wonderfully. But before we get into that, I want to talk about the exterior of this vehicle, because this is one of the spiciest looking rides. This car got so much flack for not looking like that FT1 or whatever. This is one of my most favorite looking cars of all time. I think people are just haters, man. And it's actually not even car reviewers this time. I think most car reviewers do actually like this vehicle. It's actually the community this time that despises this vehicle. This is one of the best looking cars. Hell, I actually think that this car, this silver, this boring ass tungsten silver, whatever this thing is called, 4-cylinder Supra gets more attention than my bright red LC500. I'm not even joking about that. People are just non-stop gawking at this vehicle, again, just in silver. Imagine if this is like in that yellow color or that red, or they came out with like a blue or something like that. Nuts, dude. It would blow people's minds. One of my most favorite looking rides. I think the rear end is my most favorite angle, actually. It's so wide and thick in the rear. I just want to smack it in the rear. It's so like girthy looking in the rear. So that is pretty epic. The front is pretty nice too. I mean, I love the front headlight thing going on. It's so clean, man. It's just like it's honestly, it does look similar to the FT1, just missing out on a little spoiler, and it's just a smaller stature, but it might be a little itty bitty car, but man, it packs a lot of swagger, and I appreciate that and I respect that. So if you like attention, man, this is the way to go. But again, you let me know in the comment section how you like the way that this vehicle looks. Again, I'm going to compare this to my LC500. LC is a car that, you know, videos just don't do it justice. But this vehicle, I think, you know, videos can do this vehicle justice. Again, the only detriment, okay, let's go ahead and let's talk about this driving experience now, because it's the highlight here. There's just a tiny bit of lag off the line, even in the sport mode, actually. That's the only thing I noticed. Obviously, you can play around with the, you know, manual mode and all that stuff, and that will really fix it, I guess. But that's really the only thing I noticed. But after that, man, it just starts to fly, like no doubt about it. And the handling, dude, the turning of this car is just too epic. That's what I really appreciate here. See, look at this. Hardly any roll with this chassis. It just, you turn it in, drive it like a maniac, and it just hooks and goes. That's the main highlight with the 4-cylinder model, honestly. You know, out on the highway here, you know, doing a very good speed. Stability, okay, it's decent, but it is slightly affected by the wind. And that's mostly because this has a pretty edgy feeling chassis, surprisingly. Okay, let's just calm down here. We get the point. I think the 3-liter inline-6 is the most hardcore tuned version of this vehicle at the chassis-wise anyway. For 2021, not only did the 6-cylinder get a power boost of about 47 horsepower and 3 pounds-feet of torque, but actually the chassis got revised as well. It got a little bit stiffer. This is the 4-cylinder. But what blew me away, you know, yeah, the handling is pretty epic, but dude, honestly, The refinement of this car is so good. I talked about this in my LC versus Supra review, but dude, this car, I think it's quieter than my LC actually. That it's so refined. It's one of the quietest sports cars I have ever experienced. I think most people are really going to love that. Such a refined experience, you know, both in terms of wind noise and in tire noise. I mean, there's hardly any of it. And you could be doing 15, 20 miles an hour over the speed limit in this vehicle and not even know it. And that's what's crazy about this car. That's typically like the trait of like a full-on luxury car, like an S-Class or something like that. But this Supra, I constantly find myself doing like well over the speed limit without actually meaning to. So that's the other thing. Okay, this car, you always want to floor it. You want to drive it aggressively. You want to go crazy. And you can, because of just how well this thing puts down the power. You know, all of the 255 horses, 295 pounds-feet of torque, it does a great job in putting all that down. You can turn it aggressively. You can really just stomp on the throttle. It just never slips, actually. And I try to drive this thing, you know, sport mode, traction off, and all that stuff. And here's the thing, it never really gets loose on me. I don't know if the stability is still on or what have you, but yeah, it's a very safe car to drive. So it's got the thrust. It's pretty good in that regards. But, you know, flooring it right here, it just sticks and goes. It's no problem. It's got the 50-50 weight balance, no problems there. But also, this vehicle, compared to the 6-cylinder, okay, this is actually like 220 pounds lighter, primarily in the front nose. But both cars are 50-50 weight distribution. And here, I'll address this real quick. People's main complaint with this vehicle, it's just a BMW. That's what the people just keep saying nonstop, okay? And honestly, I've had enough of that, because I shouldn't have to care, but I do care, because not only do these people, okay, 99.9% of these enthusiasts, they refuse to buy any of these sports cars, but they'll actually ridicule you for going out and purchasing one of these vehicles because they think it's a BMW, it's unreliable, it's this and that. You know, I'm sure you heard all of the stories when Toyota decided to use these 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder engines. They dissected the entire engines, right? Like from every single bolt. They determined that the BMW motors they actually meet Toyota's level of reliability. And I've heard multiple times that from BMW dealerships that the inline 4 and the inline 6 are actually pretty reliable. It's actually really not a big deal. It's actually the twin turbo V8s that cause all the issues. So that's something to keep in mind. They took the best components from BMW and shoved it in here. Okay, that Z4 platform is what they're using. That's a proper BMW chassis. I mean, the chassis in BMWs and the drivetrains are the two things that I love most out of that company, and that's exactly what they used here, but they tuned it by Toyota, essentially. So what do you get? You get the best BMW, basically, if you want to call it that, but most importantly, this is a vehicle that both companies should be extremely proud of, honestly. You know, put this thing in the sport mode. So crispy to react to that downshift, upshifts and downshifts, man. They're just so epic. Love that. But anyway, this transmission, honestly, it reacts better in this vehicle than it does in most BMW products. The ZF 8-speed, man, it is so crispy. Honestly, I would put this in the likes of the PDKs and like other dual clutch transmissions. It is that good. So that's what Toyota is using here. That's what makes this vehicle so epic. And the Z4 is obviously the only like true sports car that BMW produces. The Z4 never gets talked about despite it being like an actual sports car. And let's talk about this ride quality, because that's the one other thing. You know, how does this thing ride with the 18-inch wheels, 255 wide tires up front, 275s in the rear? Well, it actually rides good, but you know, over the smaller bumps, it can feel slightly jittery. It is a firmer ride quality, but definitely it's never going to beat you up. I think this is actually a appropriate ride quality for a vehicle like this, a true sports car. I don't really have an issue with the way that this car rides. I'll put this in line with like the Jaguar F-Type V6, like the previous generation, not the newest one, or like the F80 M3 sedan, non-competition. I think this rides similar to those vehicles. Maybe even slightly softer than the M3, I'm not sure, but I would put it in that realm. So definitely not bad at all. Again, very appropriate for a proper sports car. turn it that makes me love this vehicle. It's so predictable. It's very natural. There's nothing crazy about this car. Even when you put in the sport mode, the steering doesn't get unnecessarily heavy or synthetic. I just feel so one with this vehicle, and that's the typical Japanese mentality with these cars, right? It's like a horse and a rider or something, or one. They continue that here. You know, the BMWs can be far too synthetic. Like, they can be overkill with the steering and the ride quality. This is not, because it was tuned by Toyota, and that's what makes this car epic. It's actually one of the best collaborations of all time, and they're giving you this epic vehicle for like, what, $47,000 is the sticker price on this vehicle with the little optional extras on it. An epic price. And actually, dealerships give these vehicles away at a nice discount, like for near $5,000 off, actually. So take advantage of that for sure, by far. I mean, if I didn't already have the LC 500, man, I would, even with the LC, I would love to have this next to it. But this car could definitely use a manual transmission, not because I'm some manual freak, honestly, only because that it would really complement this car and its demeanor, because it's a real sports car. You know, the ZF 8-speed is epic, like I mentioned, one of the best automatics in the business. But you know, like if they made an LC 500 or like a Ferrari or something in a manual, I wouldn't really care. Like it's just not necessary. Certain cars are actually better off with an automatic, but this car would be great in either an auto or a manual transmission. So that's something I would love to see them add for sure. That would elevate this car to the next level. The only other thing that Toyota could have worked on with this vehicle is the communication with this car. So yeah, I feel connected to the car. Like, I know what's going on and everything, but here's the thing though. I wish there was a little bit more communication, either through the steering or what have you. I'm not really sure, but it's a disconnect that I noticed with a lot of BMW products as well, like the 440i BMW that I used to lease prior to owning the LC 500. Yeah, I could drive that car hard. I always know what's going on with the vehicle. I can slide it, all that good stuff, and that was the inline six, mind you. But there was just always this kind of a disconnect with the steering, and I kind of hope that Toyota would have addressed it or tuned that out or something like that. But maybe, you know, that's something that they could continue to improve upon for the other model years. It's something I noticed, but it's not really a detriment. It doesn't take anything away from this car. Still one of my most favorite cars I have driven. And let's compare it to some of the other hyped up nonsense vehicles. You know, the C8 Corvette, it's like the car of the century and all this other nonsense. But honestly, this is a far superior driving experience to that C8. The C8 is just so neutered. It's like built for old people, basically, with all that understeer that they kind of injected into that vehicle so people don't go out and crash it because it's a mid-engine car. But that 0 to 60 number, it means absolutely nothing, dude. This car transcends all specs. That's always been the case with many Lexus products as well, like the LC 500. But people don't really understand that this community is just so obsessed with these drag racing videos and comparing these little nanoseconds with these cars. If 0 to 60 is all you chase with the car, you're going to forever be disappointed. Because what's the end result? The end result is like a Bugatti Divo, basically. I mean, or like a Tesla, basically. But people don't like that answer. People don't like defaulting to Tesla. I don't understand why. It's got the best 0 to 60, right? But I don't know. I don't know what people truly want, but people love just nitpicking all the little numbers, and this car it far exceeds the numbers, man. As a driving experience, I even consider this to be superior to the Miata, and I mentioned that because it's one of my most favorite street sports cars that you can get, and even comes with an epic manual. But dynamically, I think this is superior. The thrust out of this 4-cylinder turbo is pretty epic, and many say that the inline six kind of unsettles that balance. I don't know. I would have to try it. I'd be very curious too. I feel like that's the model that would satisfy most egos. You know, does 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds. I'm sure it's one of the fastest cars that you're going to get pragmatically for the price, but to compete with this in a driving sense, man, I think the only cars that would compete are like the Porsche products. But the Porsche products don't feel as edgy and fun to drive as this car does. That's why I appreciate this car. And if you want a Lexus-made or a Toyota-made sports car, well, you got the RCF, but nobody bought that either. So there you go. But you got the RCF, but again, that's more Grand Tourish. You know, it's not as dynamic as this vehicle is. I would actually choose this over an RCF, honestly. It doesn't sound anywhere near as good as the V8s in the RCF or the LC 500, but it's pretty good. It'll fart and crackle a little bit when you have it in the sport mode, but again, it's kind of like a fake engine noise. Because of that, it honestly sounds similar to an inline six because they kind of injected that growl through the speaker. So there you go. It's not really a huge difference, but I'm sure the 6-cylinder version in sport mode would crackle and pop way more, something to note. But let's go ahead and let's transition over into this interior segment now. Okay, so this interior. So this is actually one of the few gripes I have with this car. So it's got the BMW interior. That I don't mind, actually. I think it's cool. I think it's a good interior, very ergonomic, easy to use. You got your own separated controls for the HVAC. It's all very easy to use. You got the 8.8-inch touchscreen, essentially, / the BMW infotainment, which I think most people would prefer compared to the Lexus infotainments or something like that. But honestly, you know, I like the Lexus infotainments and the Toyota infotainment as well, but this is also very good. Crispy, reacts very good. It's actually a previous generation BMW infotainment, which is the one I prefer. Very simple to use. But because it's a BMW interior, it's not as solid as like the Toyota / Lexus interiors. Toyota and Lexus interiors are the most solid in the industry. Along with Genesis and Porsche, these are the most solid interiors I have ever experienced. And a Mercedes S-Class, but you know. This one, it does creak and rattle a little bit. Again, like I mentioned, it does have a little bit of that jittery ride, but again, keep in mind, this is a press car. It's got 3,500 miles on it, abused, destructive miles on it. So journalists are going to put these things through all the potholes and everything. It's going to prematurely degrade this interior. And that's kind of what's happened here. So something to keep in mind. It's not as solid as the Toyota Lexus interiors, but it's not bad as a whole. It's a nice thing to interact with. You got this JBL audio system, a very bass-heavy audio system like in typical Toyota cars. But this is not a bad system. Again, this is an optional extra that you get with the $3,500 or $3,700 package, where you get blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, like wireless Apple CarPlay. You get this JBL audio and a few other things. You know, you can look that up for yourself. But is that worth it? I don't know. Up to you. You can have this vehicle even cheaper if you skip that option. So that's pretty epic, like a $40K car, man. Man, that's really nice. You got one-touch auto windows for both these windows here. Great steering wheel. It's a perfect size. You got these nice silver paddles here. Great to interact with to take advantage of this epic ZF 8-speed. These seats, man, a huge highlight with this car is the seats. It kind of has like this Alcantara material in the middle, makes it very comfortable, very breathable. You have the leather on the sides here, and the lumbar support, everything about it, it just makes you want to keep driving this car. It's so ergonomic. You got the manual seat option here. It's not electric seats like you get with the 6-cylinder models, but it's great nonetheless. Once you are situated in this vehicle, it's pretty great. So you have confidence from the driving position. Yeah, you got a blind spot in the back here with the hatchback, but again, the mirrors do a very good job. You have these nice haunches to, you know, kind of help place the vehicle out on the street, so I do like that. Plenty of headroom because it has like this bubble design here. You can sit in here with a helmet on. I'm 5'11", you know, but getting in and out of this car is a little bit difficult. It's a very low slung car. Again, traditional sports car. Watch out for this sill here if you're taller. But, you know, once you're in here, you know, 6'2", 6'3" should not be an issue when you have the seat all the way back. You know, good leg room, you know, good headroom in here. It's not really an issue. It's just watch out for this and getting in and out. That's the only difficult parts. But other than that, it's great. I love the shifter in here, and a typical BMW shifter, love that. You got an electronic parking brake, which, you know, once you put your foot on the throttle, it'll automatically disengage. I love that. Gauge cluster looks epic. You know, I love it actually kind of reminds me of the Lexus / LC500 gauge clusters. It's very cool, very crisp, high quality screen, easy to read. Fuel economy, that's actually something I failed to report on. So with maximum thrashage, I'm still getting like over 20 mpg in this vehicle, and that is a great real world figure. Yes, you do have to put premium fuel in here. Yes, a fuel tank is small, like 12.3 gallons or 12.7 gallons, something like that, but the fuel economy is great in here, like the real world fuel economy. It's one of the few turbocharged cars, the BMW turbocharged vehicles, like the inline 4, the inline 6, they get great real world fuel economy. I'm getting like 21, 22 in the city, mixed driving, if you will, aggressive driving. And I'm sure even in the inline 6, I would be getting 20 mpg in that as well. well over 30 mpg in both vehicles on the highway. So you don't have any rear seats back here, and you don't have a center armrest, but you do have 2 cup holders, a little cubby space in the back, and decent amount of space in the glove box, a legitimate space to put your phone in the front here, so I do appreciate that. Automatic headlights, automatic high beams, but anyway, no rear seats, so you don't have to worry about that, but you do have a nice hatchback space back there, similar to a Jaguar F-Type / C7 Corvette, and you got some subwoofers back there. It looks pretty cool, I guess. But yeah, it's not a large amount of space, but because you can, put longer items in here, I think it's cool. I think it's pretty pragmatic for the most part. It's a pretty tiny vehicle, so rear seats would have been a waste anyway. But this is a hot car, man. There's no spare tire back there, but yeah, it's a hot car. It gets a ton of attention. It's reasonably pragmatic and, practical in here. But most importantly, man, I love driving this car. For a brand new car with the warranty, for like 40 to 50K, absolutely brilliant. And you can get a rocket ship engine like that, 382 horsepower, inline 6 if you want that. But I love this balanced feel that you get with this vehicle, man. It is just so satisfactory. One of my most favorite cars, and that's actually why I chose to compare this 4-cylinder to my LC500, because they're 2 of my most favorite driving experiences I have had out on the street, for 2 different price points, delivering to me 2 different driving demeanors. So that's why I decided to compare them. They're 2 epic cars in their own rights, and they're a great street car that transcends its specs. Don't let these naysayers get the best of you. Pull the trigger on these vehicles, man. I've driven multiple multi-six-figure cars. I've driven Supra cars out on the track, the Ferraris, the Lambos, the McLaren 570s, all these cars, but they're not really worth to me $300,000. AMG GT, it's not really worth to me 6 figures. LC500 is one of the few cars that's worth 6 figures to me. It's actually worth putting your financial future in jeopardy for. But you don't have to. You can get this car for half the price, and it's epic. So please take advantage of this. This is one of the best modern day collaborations ever between BMW and Toyota. Such a cool car, such a great driving experience. I hope you take advantage of it. The few compromises you make, it's worth it. So thank you very much for watching. Take care and goodbye.